All right, y'all, welcome back to Keepin the Comic, and we're diving into another Venom War tie-in here with Venom issue number 39. Now, this is where we get to see Old Man Venom, Dylan Brock, meet face-to-face with Meridius in the past, and what unravels there is amazing. We also understand why Dylan had to go see Loki, as this brings them to Never the Lair, and then we also get to see more of how Dylan plays into this whole Venom War storyline. That concludes, by the way, in the next couple of weeks here, so I'm excited to go through this one. Now, initially here, we start off by seeing Meridius when he had traveled back to the beginning of time, and he's kind of like walking through the history of time here. And throughout this entire time, Meridius has been waiting for the right opportunity to intervene. So he's basically been staying out of the way of man and kind of, as he says, lets them destroy themselves. And he does that here for essentially a millennia. Now he ends up meeting up with Eddie Brock's parents, right? Carl and Jamie Brock, and introduces himself as Edward. Now, at the time, Eddie's mother was pregnant with Eddie, and he had set himself up as their neighbor to keep watch because, as we will see later on, Meridius here is looking for answers. So we jump back to Old Man Dylan and the Venom symbiote, and remember that they had both just met past Loki here at the Jotunheim. So Loki is like, okay, what are you? Talking to the Venom symbiote here. So Venom, as expected, is like, we are Venom. Which Loki's like, yeah, okay, my guy, there is a mortal man inside of you. And that's when Venom tries to tell him that, listen, okay, I am a symbiote here. But Loki just calls him a parasite, and then he uses his magic to grab him and throw him outside of the house that they were in. Now, Old Man Dylan is telling Venom, listen, we need Loki, so please don't do anything crazy. But at this point, the Venom symbiote is upset because, you know, he doesn't like anybody calling him a parasite, right? Now, we know in Loki, right? We know that this dude is always up to some tricks here. So the Loki that they were attacking, though, that was just an illusion, right? So in this moment too, Loki realizes that Dylan and Venom are carrying something with them, which, as we know, as we've been following this here over the past few issues, that it's the molten alloy that they got here from Molten Man, and they also just got a weapon as well, or a piece of magic here from Chthon, to be able to make that ultimate weapon that they need here in this Venom War. So Dylan lets him know that he will tell Loki everything, but that he needs to leave the Venom symbiote alone because he needs him. Because we know, right, from previous issues here that Dylan is dying and he needs the Venom symbiote in order for him to be able to stay alive. But Loki thinks that the parasite, as he continues to call him, is controlling Dylan and is making him saying this. So with Venom seeing that Loki is not going to listen, he's like, okay, I guess we're just gonna have to show this dude then. Because the thing here is that Loki is a very important part to the making this ultimate weapon. He's like the next part of the plan here. So when Loki attacks them with a dagger, the molten alloy starts to form around him like a force field. And it's really cool, if I gotta say so myself. And it's stated here that they were able to actually see, like Venom and Dylan, that they were actually able to see in the reflection of the metal alloy, the universes that have been long since dead, the worlds through the eyes of Chthon, boundless powers, and unending destruction. So then Loki, he puts his finger out, right? And he's like starting to touch this thing here. And he got like this little like awe and shock and surprise on his face as well. Now, Dylan tells Loki that Doctor Strange had told them that the weapon that they want to make, that it cannot be forged in the light. And that Loki was the one to be able to help them, or at least he could help them, he said, if they were willing to give him a piece of it also. So Loki, knowing far more about what this actual thing that they hold is, and is kind of surprised that Dylan is willing to give it up. And this is where he kind of realizes that Dylan probably doesn't really know exactly what this thing is either. So he's like, okay, yeah, okay, you have a deal. So this is when we flash back here to Meridius, right? So Meridius has made himself a regular friend and sort of like an orderly citizen here as he watches Eddie Brock's life from the very beginning. And here we see and we understand that Eddie Brock wasn't loved much by his father. Eddie was actually 9 years old when he found out that his mother died while giving birth to him. And from that point on, Eddie did everything to try and impress his dad and receive his love. He tried studying hard, he played sports, and at some point in time, man, Eddie was just like, all right, dude, like I'm just gonna stop expecting my father to show up here in the stands anymore. And then later on, when Eddie was almost a man, this is when tragedy happens, right? There was a young boy that was running across the street after some cat, and Eddie ends up hitting him with the car. And his father, like, he was trying to scream for Eddie to stop before the whole thing happened in the first place, but Eddie couldn't hear him. And when Eddie jumps out of the car, man, you can see like what looks like cans of beer. Like, oh my god, like this whole story of Eddie Brock as a child is just a tragic story and was really kind of a sad part of this entire issue here. And it's here right now where like Meridius says something that I thought was interesting. He's like, this is the moment when he saw that Eddie went from neglected teenager to monster. As in, this pain was always in Eddie. That's what allowed him to be able to kind of form with Venom, right? That's some kind of reading between the lines here. And Meridius wonders, he's like, to what extent this human has affected him? What, if anything, remains of the Eddie Brock within him now? But before he goes on here, we jump back to Dylan and Loki, old man Dylan and Loki. And this is now where they're at Fender Forge here in Neverdair, which is a place, of course, that has produced some of the strongest weapons, right? Like Thor's hammer, Stormbreaker, you can go on and on. So Loki, he lets him know that, just as Strange had said, that the weapon cannot be forged in light. So they're gonna have to make do here in the shadows. So Loki asks a question, how many weapons do you need? And then Dylan says, well, as many as you can. So after Dylan takes some time to rest, though he really couldn't sleep in that moment here, Loki comes to him and lets him know that it's done, like everything is all set. And he tells Dylan, 2 for you and then 1 for me, which made me laugh because Dylan was like, only 2 at first. And then we see like Loki holding this whole big little dagger here while Dylan got these 2 little small looking bullets. And I'm just like, this is very much a Loki thing to do. The god of mischief himself, of course, this dude was going to take advantage of the situation, right? So then shortly after that, Loki uses his magic and then sends him back to Midgard, which is when we see Meridius following Eddie Brock while he's working as a journalist, and he's also here with Anne Wing. This is where we also get to see that once Anne had delivered Dylan Brock, that she didn't tell, of course, Eddie about it. She gives Dylan to Eddie's father as well, which Meridius cites is basically history repeating itself all over again with Dylan Brock. And then it dawns on him, he's like, hold on, Dylan, that's it. Because Meridius had seen Dylan before, the old man version of him, which he didn't recognize before was Dylan. And he remembered that he had followed old man Dylan to see Doctor Strange. And of course, we know Doctor Strange is the one that took old man Dylan to see Chthon. And remember that before, Strange had blocked him from being able to see anything in the Sanctum Sanctorum. So after old man Dylan had entered in, he didn't know what happened after that. So right when Dylan had just gotten back to Earth, he's like literally floating in the sky or falling in the sky, Meridius was able to intercept him while he was in that air at the same time. So then Meridius tells him, you're not supposed to be here, Dylan. But old man Dylan is like, who is Dylan? Because remember, Chthon had taken his name. That was a part of the deal that he had made here with Chthon to be able to get what he needed here for the weapon. So Dylan mentions how he remembers him from a long time ago, and he's talking about Meridius, and now he was there at the battle, which is a little bit surprising considering that technically Dylan isn't supposed to remember this, right? Because Chthon had also taken his memories, which makes me wonder if these are the memories here of Venom instead. So this is where Meridius recognizes 2 things. He's like, number 1, that this Dylan that he's talking to is from the future. And at number 2, that this is a future where Meridius is not. And in that moment, old man Dylan also blasts him with a gun at the same time, which as we can see is causing Meridius here some pain. Now, Dylan is trying to run away from the scene here while he believes that he is stunned for a moment. Like Meridius is like suspended in the air. So he's like, yo, let me book it and try to get out of here. So then Meridius is able to like regain his footing and he tells Dylan, yo, I am the king in everything. And then he uses his tendrils that he looks like he's like conjuring him up here from the ground. And then he yanks Venom back. And also he's using them at the same time to be able to get into Venom and Dylan's mind. Now, if you watch my video here where I cover Venom War Carnage, the very last issue here of the tie-in for Venom War Carnage, you knew that Meridius had already gotten into old man Dylan's mind here, but this is where we see to what extent and what information he was able to get, or it clarifies a little bit more as to what that is. So here is where Meridius is able to see the future through Dylan's mind. He's able to see the upcoming war and what follows after it here for decades, which is when the pain for Meridius starts. He feels old man Dylan and knows that he is dying. He can feel the radiation that is in the air here from Dylan's future that flows from Venom to Meridius. It feels like poison in his blood, and Meridius can only ask, what is this? And we know from Venom War Carnage that he had shared how he was able to kind of like harness this, right, and be able to use it as a weapon for himself here in the present time for his K-44 and all that. Now, that feeling is what breaks the ties between him and old man Dylan and allows for old man Dylan to be able to escape as the pain lingers, as I said here, for Meridius. So Dylan, using his Doom Tech, he's trying to power it up so that he can jump to a different time. He also gets Venom to use all the power that they have left to shoot Meridius as they get flung forward in time, as it says. Now, this is where we see old man Venom. He ends up here in the present time, right where we had seen younger Dylan, Codex, stab Eddie Brock right at the end of the main Venom War storyline issue in issue number 4, which is a video that I also just recently covered as well. So go check it out here in the description. And it's here where old man Venom says, here he is back at what was the worst moment in his life playing out right around him. And this is where there's only one thing that is left to do, which is to die. And to me here, Dylan is talking about himself, because Dylan is willing to sacrifice himself in order for him to be able to save this war, save his future from ultimately happening. This is something that he's talked about since the very beginning. But it's interesting here because we're seeing Eddie Brock, who essentially is the one that looks like he's going to die. But of course, we all believe that this is not going to play out that way, right? So listen, I cannot wait to see in the next couple weeks here where the main Venom War storyline, where this concludes. My goodness, this was a really good issue. And I just love how they're piecing these stories together. Ah, great, 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 great. What do you think, guys, about this particular issue here? Are you looking forward to this Venom War concluding? It's been amazing. Leave it down below in the comments. Like and subscribe for more here on the channel. Check out our playlist if you haven't done so already, so that you can keep up with Venom War. I have over 20 videos here on the channel that are covering tie-ins and series and everything here from the Venom War. So if you want to get caught up, go check that out, guys. Appreciate you watching. And as always, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.